One of my primary concerns then was only live by your own rules, only work to your own standards, see how that goes. So when we finished Southeastern, I was completely satisfied with it because I thought, well, this sounds like a good album to me, and I'm going to stop there and then see what happens. And then it just went crazy.
Back in 2013, Jason Isbell released an album about changing his life, and it changed his life. It was called Southeastern, and it was a reflection on who and what he'd been until very shortly before it was released. An enthusiastic, if reckless archetype of the dissolute southern rocker, Alabama-raised and hell-raising, first as a guitarist with drive-by truckers, then as a solo artist trading in whiskey-soaked ballads. 5 more studio albums have followed Southeastern, turning Isbell into an authentic Grammy-winning chart topper and, as of Martin Scorcese's Killers of the Flower Moon, a movie star. I'm Andrew Mueller, and on his 3rd visit to Monocle, I spoke to Jason Isbell for the big interview. Jason Isbell, welcome to the big interview.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I want to start with something relatively recent because I think as will become clear over this conversation, you've had quite a life full of what must be how did I get here moments, but playing at the Democratic National Convention, you played Something More Than Free, wearing a tuxedo and a smart bow tie. What are you actually thinking about while you're playing at an event like that?
The straightness of the bow tie. Anytime I'm wearing a bow tie, all I'm thinking about is this crooked? No, in fact, it's interesting you should ask that because right before I went on stage, first of all, I just happened to have a blue tuxedo, and I thought, well, if not now, when? I may never get to wear this again. So I took it with me, and when I was about to go on stage, I had this moment where somebody texted me and said, you know, what station, what channel is this on? What network is this on? And I said, it's on all of them. And good luck not being able to find, good luck not watching this. And when I said that, it just kind of hit me. Oh my God, this is on every television station. There's going to be millions and millions of people. And I took that first as, don't fuck this up. And then I thought, that's not how we're going to play it. We're not going to do that. We're not going to spend our life in these big, significant moments thinking, don't fuck this up. We'll worry about that afterward. Right now, we're going to remember as much of it as possible and enjoy it. And so when that happened, it just kind of relaxed. And also, I mean, the energy in that room was palpable. It was a really beautiful moment. And, for once in American politics, for once in a long time since the Obama administration, everybody kind of felt like someone actually did something. When Biden stepped out of the race and Kamala stepped in, it was like, there are things to criticize, infinite things to criticize about everyone in any office or running for any office in America. But for a moment there, it felt like somebody did something selfless. And so that the excitement of that was huge.
You also, I noticed, played recently at another Kamala Harris-Tim Walz event with Michael Stipe, late of R.E.M., who, of course, is a demonstration that, broadly speaking, Southern rock singers with broadly liberal views are not an entirely new invention. But when you were growing up, did that ever strike you as a contradiction?
It struck everybody around me as a contradiction. Everybody in the lunchroom at school, it definitely hit them as a contradiction. And yeah, I think, Michael and I are probably the only two people with this accent that they could get to say those words. But, yeah, I mean, it's to be in a club that is relatively small but populated with people I respect so much. People like Silas House in Kentucky, like people who aren't abashed about their southernness, but at the same time have a very progressive view of the world and a political belief system that transcends the game of politics. It's nice because I grew up around a lot of rednecks, and God love them, they're great at some things, but they're not very good at realizing how to vote for their own interests, how to take care of themselves at the ballot box.
Did you ever sort of isolate in your own head, though, why it is that I don't think like this?
Definitely, yeah. Like, it's weird. For a long time, I thought, what a curse. And then I realized that it was actually the opposite of that it took all those things to make my voice. And, you know, I remember being on The Daily Show back in the States, and that was like the first television show that had me in the chair. Everybody else would have me play a song and then interview somebody else. And Trevor Noah had me in the chair and interviewed me. And so many people just heard the sound of my voice, and it clashed with the things that I was saying, and it caught their interest. And people started listening to music, or I would hear from so many folks later online or even in real life, and they would say things like, I think this happened with David Crosby. Crosby was like, I was just watching The Daily Show, and I was like, "What? This person's clearly a redneck. Why?" I didn't know they made that kind of redneck, and this has served me so well. It's turned out to be a really beautiful thing. But I spent a lot of years thinking, what's wrong with me that I don't agree with the people around me?
Did you ever figure out, though, why you didn't agree with them? Had you just read different books or been exposed to different influences? What was it?
I think there was some cycle breaking, you know, some generational trauma cycle breaking at work there. Because my parents and their parents were very open-minded people. Like, neither of my parents would ever vote for Trump, which, you know, to be from Alabama and be a white kid and say neither of my parents would ever vote for Trump, this is a unicorn situation. Everybody I know is like, yeah, I loved my dad until Trump ran for president. Now we don't talk to each other. And so I'm very, very fortunate that I had open-minded, open-hearted people as parents. And I think, you know, they were doing a little bit better or being a little bit more humanist in their views than the generation before them and the generation before them. And part of it, I think, was the way my family viewed religion, you know, because my grandfather was a Pentecostal preacher. And there were a lot of people in that church who were in some sort of personal recovery process. A lot of people who had been to prison or been alcoholics. I remember being in his study, which was, you know, like an office, but just another bedroom in the house that the preacher always calls his study. And finding a blue book, finding a big book, the AA book, and asking my grandfather if he had ever drank. And he said, no, one of my parishioners gave me that, you know, as a gift when he stayed sober for a certain amount of time. And it started to occur to me that a lot of those people were broken individuals, and they came to that church looking for salvation, as people used to do. And you know, that's sort of, I'm not religious, but that's the system that I have the most respect for, is when somebody sort of crawls up to the front door of the church and says, help me, and the community helps them. And I think that's the most beautiful way for that to be, that transaction to happen. I think the other side of that coin is these big mega churches where everybody's looking for a network rather than a community, you know, and some sort of pecking order and some sort of power and some sort of notoriety. And then you get a large group of people who believe very stubbornly that for some reason they're better than people who are different from them.
But you never either then or since felt alienated at all from the actual music popularly associated with that line of thinking? You never sort of felt like you wanted to forswear country music and Southern rock? And
well, that's a new thing, the music being connected with that kind of belief system.
True enough, actually.
That's a new thing, because that's not how it used to be. You know, I mean, you didn't hear Ronnie Van Zant talking about Republican politicians. He actually gave them a little bit of a hard time. If you listen to Sweet Home Alabama, you know, it's not, and obviously, yeah, it's more complicated than that. I mean, they had Confederate flags on stage, but this, I think, was for them more branding than anything else.
It's correct, though, is it not, that you own the guitar on which Sweet Home Alabama was definitely played?
Close. That's
written?
Close. So it's the one that I own. The one that song was played on and written on is a piece of shit. It's and I'm sorry, whoever paid $500,000 for it, I'm sorry, but it's a piece of shit. It is a very significant historical piece of shit, and it's probably the most heard guitar in American history just for that one single part. But it was just a mid-'70s Strat, and I think Ed wanted it to sound like a banjo, Ed King, and he just sent somebody to the guitar store to get a Strat. And so when they recorded that, they were not making great guitars at Fender. They are now, and we love our Fender friends. But that guitar, I played that when it was there when I bought the Les Paul that I have. So what I have is the Les Paul that Ed essentially bought when he started getting the checks from that, and this was in the early '80s, and this one was his baby. This was his prized possession, and I bought it from his widow when he passed.
I mean, doubtless a step up on what you started out playing, but again, I do want to go back to those formative years as well, because it's a thing that strikes me about songwriting is one of those things which, in theory, anybody could do. If you've taught yourself to play 3 or 4 chords and you understand how to rhyme street with meat or dance with chance, you can write a song, but it's obviously very difficult to write one that anybody's going to care about in 5 minutes, never mind write loads of songs that will stay with people for years. Do you have a recollection of finishing a particular song for the first time and thinking, this might actually be properly good?
No, that hasn't happened yet. The good news is nobody cares what I think about the songs as far as quality goes. No, I remember... Yes, I'll tell you what happened. So I was waiting tables in Memphis. I was in college in Memphis and working in a restaurant, and one of the other waiters said, I have a gig this Friday at a coffee shop downtown called the Map Room. And he said, would you like to open for me? And I said, sure, yeah, no problem. What do I have to do? And I had never played any of my songs in public before. I'd played guitar for other people, but I'd never sang my own music. And he said, we have to have 30 minutes of original material. I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. I got that. Well, I did not have that. I had a bunch of songs that there's no way anybody was ever going to hear. So I went home and I stayed up all night and I drank Everclear and Gatorade mixed together. And I wrote 30 minutes worth of songs, just flipping back and forth and back and forth. And I went and played those. And when I did, everybody sort of looked around the room uncomfortably, and then their mouths sort of dropped open, and I thought, oh, something's worth doing here. And so when I got back to Alabama, back to Muscle Shoals, I was playing with some other musicians, and we made a demo of those songs and a few other songs and took it to Fame Studios, thinking maybe they'll make a record on our band. And they didn't want to do that, but they wanted to sign me to a publishing contract. And that was the first set of songs that I ever showed anybody outside of just, myself.
Did the confidence come and go, though, certainly before recent years? Because obviously early on, and this part of your career has been gone over extensively, so I won't overdo it, but you get asked to join Drive-By Truckers. You stay with them for 3 albums and contribute some tremendous songs to those 3 albums. But after you leave Drive-By Truckers in 2007 and you sort of establish yourself as a solo artist, were there any moments then of thinking, does this still work? Can I do this by myself?
There were moments of, does this work? But I was delusional enough to think it was somebody else's fault, And I think that saved my ass sometimes, because rather than give up on it, I thought, oh, they're just not ready for this, or they want to hear a watered down version of this, Now, the truth of the matter was that I was not performing and producing at the level that I was capable of, or certainly not anywhere near what my potential was. And then when I quit drinking and actually started spending time in the chair, that changed significantly. But before Southeastern, before I got sober, my primary thought about not being comfortable on the road, not being able to hear myself at shows, the things that I really register as signs of success, I thought, well, this is just not happening because everybody else is wrong. Everybody has bad musical tastes. And that was, a ridiculous idea now that I look back on it, but that kept my ass in the van and got me down the road. I remember there was one moment where I thought, what if I just go play guitar for somebody else? Make it easy, take the weight off my shoulders, don't put my name on the sign. And I talked to Audley Freed about that. And Audley was in the Black Crowes, and he had a band called Cry of Love back in the day. He plays with Sheryl Crow now, and has for a long time. Just one of the all-time greatest side people, incredible guitar player, best hang. I loved him like family. But I told him, it's been maybe 15 years ago, and I said, I'm thinking about going and just being a side person and playing guitar for somebody else. And he said, no, brother, you got plenty of time for that later on. You need to keep doing what you're doing. And so later on, years later, when we were co-headlining with Cheryl at a amphitheater or an arena or something, I reminded him of that. He didn't remember saying it, but I was like, thank you for telling me not to take that route yet, because it wound up paying off.
I'll go back to at the time. Did that record feel like, before other people had heard it, did it feel to you like the breakthrough it became? Because more than any other record I can think of in my own life in the last decade, that was the one where I just kept getting messages and emails from people saying, have you heard this?
I knew that it worked as far as my standards went at the time. And I, at that point, had recently started practicing the ignorance of outside influences, and because, I had just gotten sober. I've been sober like 1 year when that record was made. I got married at the same time we made that record. Like, I went in and did overdubs, and then me and Amanda went on our honeymoon the next day, so it was just like all at once. And I was trying really hard. Nowadays, I've gotten to a point where I can let a little bit of the outside in without it harming my opinion of the results of my work, because I've spent so much time trying to focus on the work itself as its own reward. But at the time, I was bitter, I was resentful, I was unhappy, and then I got sober, and then I saw why I had those feelings. And so one of my primary concerns then was only live by your own rules, only work to your own standards, see how that goes. So when we finished Southeastern, I was completely satisfied with it, because I thought, well, this sounds like a good album to me, and I'm going to stop there and then see what happens. And then it just went crazy. So it was like this perfect storm of, me sort of formulating the way I was going to work for the rest of my life, and it paying off when I had let go of that idea.
Is it hard to do that now, though, or do you still try to do that idea of shutting out the outside noise? Because every album you've made since Southeastern, obviously, you're now making in the knowledge that this is probably going to be a pretty big deal. Loads of people are going to hear this. This will not be an anonymous thing that nobody pays attention to.
Yeah, I go through phases with that. There were times when that was a lot of pressure, and then, I acknowledged that it was a lot of pressure. Not an easy thing to acknowledge. It was a difficult point in my life to realize that. Like, making reunions was a period there where it was hard. The pressure was getting to me, but I wasn't ready to admit that yet. I wanted to be cool and say, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm over here trying to make art, blah, 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 blah. And then I realized, no, I actually do care what some people think. It's kind of important to me. So I feel like I go through phases of that. Right now I'm in this comfortable place where, I want people to like the music that I make, but I've also been doing it a certain way for so long that I know how to write a song now.
Does that ever get in your head to an extent, though? Do you ever find yourself writing something or having finished something and find yourself thinking, God, is that too much like a Jason Isbell song?
That's a good question.
Bound to happen eventually.
Yeah, and obviously none of us want to become an impersonation of ourselves. But no, I think that more often with other people's music. Is that too much like a Jason Isbell song? Should I call the lawyers? No, yeah, sometimes, but I still like Jason Isbell songs. And as long as I'm not trying to write one, I think I'm fine. As long as that occurs to me somewhere along the line and not right at the beginning, I don't sit down and go, I need to write Southeastern again. I think I'm okay.
But do you note recurring themes emerging, though? There is definitely a thing of, I guess, rebelling against stereotypes of Southern masculinity. You can hear that on Alabama Pines, which I remember you playing here a long time ago, Hope the High Road, Middle of the Morning, even Outfit, I guess, that lovely song for drive-by truckers about your dad's advice to you.
Yeah, that comes back. And I'll stop singing about that when it's no longer necessary. Any minute now, the toxic Southern masculinity is gonna go away, and I'm gonna get to sing about something different. It's an ongoing struggle, and for me too. Like as I go through my life and realize, oh, that's a hang up. From me being a big redneck man from Alabama. That's what that is, And until I have it sorted, it's still going to be in the songs. My job is to find new angles and new stories to tell and new ways of introducing those themes. But my songwriting method, the way that I get better at songwriting, in my own opinion, is I identify more things to ignore. Once you have the technique, I know how to write a song. I know how to get rhymes that aren't obvious. I know where to put line breaks and how to phrase things that make them sing comfortably, sound overheard, sound conversational. I know little rules like, try to have fewer words in the chorus than you have in the verse. I know that, I know those things, and they're ingrained now. For me, the next step is I'm always looking for things to ignore. Like, what is slowing me down right now? And one of the things that slows me down is if I focus on the themes of the song while I'm writing them. There's writing the song, and then there's editing the song. And those two don't need to happen at the same time if you can help it, because then you move very slowly and you'll kill your own ideas before they ever actually get contextualized in a way that makes them work, so they don't get a chance, So the further I go in the process, I think just get it out as cleanly and as quickly as possible, and then you can go back and fix it. It's very rare that I concern myself with what I'm writing about or with any sort of comparison to myself or to anybody else. Now, if I get done with a song and I look down and I've written fucking happy birthday, then yeah, I'm going to have to go back and do something different, because sure enough, I'll get all the way through a song and be like, oh, that's yesterday. Maybe I should change the melody a little bit. But until it's done, until that draft is done and that burst of creativity is over, my job is to let it happen and let it go.
But do you ever find yourself now, though, and from your current position, I guess, even having any instinctive inclinations towards not writing something or toning something down because this is going to annoy people or people are going to read something into it? I mean, I'm not going to ask you about your divorce from Amanda because, controversially, I don't believe it's any of my damn business.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
But you will be aware that there were definite non-zero numbers of your fans who actually seemed to take it kind of personally.
They did. They felt so divorced. They felt so divorced. And it could be worse, Andrew. People could not give a shit about any of it.
There's that.
But it could also be better. People could be normal about it all. I would love that. The truth is, I'm going to be in the work. I'm going to write about the things that help me sort out my life. So, yeah, for better or worse, it's going to be in there. I mean, I've been writing songs now all year, and there are certainly moments in there where I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a tough sale, this is not going to make me look great. And I don't mean stuff about the relationship. Like, I honestly feel like I was honest and made decisions the best way that I possibly could for the whole time she and I were together. I have no, I'm still sober, and I look back on all that and think I did the best that I could do, and I did a really good job. And, just because it ended doesn't mean it was a failure. But there's going to, I move forward in my life and new things happen, and I want to write about that, and I want to do it in a way that's not dishonest. That's my rule. So if it makes me squirm a little bit, makes me feel uncomfortable, it's got to stay in.
I do want to ask about what I'm guessing was a different kind of discomfort, which was appearing in Scorcese's Killers of the Flower Moon as Bill Smith. And I know you'd done a couple of cameo-ish things before, I think in Deadwood and in Billions, but that is quite the leap into the deep end. I'm going to have a go at acting, and I'm going to do this opposite Leonardo, DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone. Possibly a weird thing to ask an actor for whom I guess it's a trade in which imposter syndrome is probably a good thing. But did you feel that?
I don't know that I felt that. I mean, maybe that's what I don't think it was any kind of syndrome, Andrew. I think I was an imposter. I don't think I was having any illusions or delusions. I think I was just really did not belong there. But after a few days, I realized I've never seen a Scorcese movie where I thought that was great, but that one hillbilly fucked it up. So he's not going to let me be that one hillbilly. And also, I mean, I find that if I'm in creative control of a project, everybody has to do what I say. Now, I will limit that to veto power, and I will die on very few hills. And I will let somebody have their time because I can afford to do that, to come up with something that pleases me from a creative perspective. If I wrote the songs, I'm producing a record, whatever. But this was not my circus, and those were not my monkeys. So I showed up on time, and I did what I was told to the best of my ability, and that alleviated the concerns that I don't belong here. I just tried my best, and when I didn't know how to do something, I would go to Lily, or Leo, or any of the other real actors and say, how do I fucking do this, And they would tell me because they're really good at their job and they want that movie to be good, and they had a lot of their own personal interests invested. So it was a beautiful thing. It felt so good to be terrified. I got there and the first day was like a rehearsal with De Niro and DiCaprio, and I couldn't hardly make words come out of my mouth. I'd memorized my line, knew what I was supposed to say, knew how to deliver it, but when it was time, it just croaked. My throat thought I was choking on a sandwich and just closed up on me because I was so afraid. And I was so grateful for that feeling. I'm in my 40s and I don't have any bills and I'm not sick, and I got to be scared in a controlled and creative environment, and it felt great. And then when I didn't screw it up, oh man, the combination of accomplishment and relief that you can't find outside of opioids,
Is that something you'd like to do more of?
If it's right for the story. I got asked that question a lot on set.
Because it's time-consuming, I imagine.
It's so time-consuming, and I love my day job. I really, truly love my day job. So I'm not going to be an actor. Luckily, the kind of music I make, the kind of crowd that I have, I can do that as an old person. Nobody's looking at, well, maybe somebody's looking at my ass, but everybody's not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the changes that I go through physically. I can still go up there and sing these folk songs for people. So I'm going to continue to do that job. But if something comes along like that, I would get asked by some of the other actors on set, not the big stars, but some of the other folks, like, are you going to do more of this? This seems like something you enjoy. And I was like, well, if it's a story that I think is significant and I can help somebody tell it, and they'd be like, I had to do a tampon commercial last week. This sucks that you can just say, oh, no, I'll work with Scorcese again, but I'm not going to stoop to making a movie. But I'm in a really lucky spot where if there's something that I think is going to be worth doing, I can do it. And if not, I'll just go play some more shows and have fun.
We alluded earlier to the 10th anniversary of Southeastern. There was another anniversary I did want to mention, and I do have a reasonably serious reason for doing so. It may have escaped your notice, but August was the 5th anniversary of the feral hogs tweet. I know.
The most famous thing I ever did.
And I know you don't do social, or you don't do Twitter or whatever we're calling it now anymore.
I don't do Twitter anymore, no, because Elon ruined it.
He did. But to bring listeners up to speed, there was a conversation about guns, about which you did have some controversial opinions for, as you put it, a redneck from Alabama. Somebody from Arkansas responded demanding to know what he was supposed to do with, as he put it, the 30 to 50 feral hogs that ran into his garden while his children were playing, and it went...
Every 3 to 5 minutes?
It was something like that, but it went absolutely nuts. And the reason I wanted to bring it up was not just because I find it ceaselessly amusing, but there was something there. There's a lesson there about the importance of particular words. And I do know, and I know we've talked about this before, your own punctiliousness in making sure a particular word is right. Because if he'd said 30 to 50 wild pigs, that's not funny. There was something about the words and the sounds.
Hogs.
Hogs.
Wow, yeah. 30 to 50 feral hogs.
Feral hogs.
If he'd said boars, if he said if he just said hogs.
If he'd said dozens of wild pigs, it's not funny.
No, he landed it perfectly. Like Bob Newhart couldn't have written that better. And it went so viral so quickly. I mean, it was the New Yorker cartoon that week, and my manager bought the original for me for Christmas, Yeah, Willie McNabb. You know what? We wound up getting some state funding to help from that. So Arkansas has a little bit less of a feral hog problem because of me and Willie McNabb.
They're down to 20 to 40.
Yeah. 15 to 35 feral hogs now.
But is there, just before we close, some kind of lesson there about the importance of words and the reason that details like that are important, the difference that a sound or a syllable can make to a phrase? Is it something that you keep coming back to? Are you a perfectionist when you write things in that respect?
Without a doubt. Yeah. And composers, when they're doing the libretto, they focus on the vowel sounds and the consonants and all these things completely separate from the meaning of what they're writing, And when somebody's writing a joke, somebody's really good at writing a joke, a stand-up or something, they spend a whole lot of time on how those sounds land. And this is another reason why I'm just infinitely grateful that I grew up in Alabama, because, I can say just about anything in most parts of the world, and somebody's going to look at me like Bill Hicks used to say, like I'm showing a dog a card trick, and I'm so lucky that this is the way I talk, especially right now when it's super hot to be a cowboy. Everybody thinks I'm a cowboy, It's like, I'm not a cowboy. I just talk this way. But as far as the sound of the words and the meaning of the words, we have to have a common denominator. And the language, I was just reading something this morning, actually, that Joan Didion had said about, the words themselves, the knowledge of the words themselves becomes the power that you have. And that's everything to me, because if it's the right word, it does its job. If it's almost the right word, and you do that a few times, it gets exponentially weaker. And what it does is it breaks the thread, because you don't want people to know they're listening to a song. Just like, right now we don't want people to know we're listening to an interview. We don't want people to recognize that they're reading a book. You want people to just go inside the world that you have built for them and wander around and look around and hear the story that you're telling them. And to do that, you have to eliminate all the ways that you remove them from the story and remind them that they're consuming a story, secondhand. And to do that, all those words and all those sounds have to be the right ones. They can't be almost the right ones, or the good listeners will stop and go, and then you're gone. You've kept moving. The song has moved on, and they're lost.
Jason Isbell, thank you. That's it for this edition of The Big Interview. It was produced by Gunnar Grunlid and edited by Lily Austin. Jason Isbell is, as of this broadcast, about halfway through his annual run of shows at the Ryman Theatre in Nashville, and he begins a European tour in Oslo on November 5th. The rest of the dates are at jasonisbell.com. From me, Andrew Mueller, thanks very much for listening, and playing us out, here is Jason Isbell from the new Live from the Ryman Volume 2, with a song which also features on his current studio album, Weather Vanes. It's Cast Iron Skillet.
Don't wash the cast iron skillet. Don't drink and drive, you spill it. Don't ask too many questions or you'll never get to sleep. There's a hole inside you, fill it. Shower up in the shade, put flowers on the grave, and ask the Lord to save his soul, although you know that it's too late. Was it 27 times, or was it 29? I heard the blade broke off inside the man, and he took a while to die. How did you get so low? It seems like just a week ago we were 10 and 12 years old. He was sweet and soft, he shied away from the inside fastballs and died doing life without parole. Don't wash the cast iron skillet. That dog bites my kid, I'll kill it. Don't walk where you can't see your feet. Don't ask questions, just believe it. Jamie found a boyfriend with smiling eyes and dark skin, and her daddy never spoke another word to her again. See him at the quick stop, lying to the county cops and laughing like his soul was without sin. Tell me, how'd you get so low? It seems like just a week ago she was sitting on your shoulders watching fireworks in the sky. He treats her like a queen, but you don't know, 'cause you ain't seen. It's hard to go through life without your daddy by your side. Don't wash the cast iron skillet. This town won't get no better, will it? She found love and it was simple as a weather vane, but her own family tried to kill it. Don't wash the cast iron skillet. Don't wash the cast iron skillet. Don't wash the cast iron. Thank you.